He didn't kiss me the night we met. He didn't need to. He bought the entire damn bar instead. I should have walked away then. But who walks away from a man like Ethan Cole? A man who moves through Manhattan like he owns every inch of it, and maybe he does. His smile could start wars, and his wallet could end them. I thought he was a dream wrapped in Armani. Turns out he was a storm disguised as summer rain. The first time I saw him, I was broke, exhausted, and one rent payment away from packing up my life in a cardboard box. He appeared out of nowhere like every bad decision that looks good in a leather jacket and asked if he could buy me a drink. I said yes. That's how disasters start, right? With yes. The night air in Manhattan was sticky with July heat, and inside the bar, the AC worked like a dying man gasping for breath. I was nursing a whiskey I couldn't afford when he walked in, and God help me, the room bent toward him. Broad shoulders, that sharp jawline women write sonnets about, eyes so piercing they felt illegal. His suit, midnight blue, tailored to sin. He looked like money, but not the kind you earn, the kind you inherit and multiply while laughing on yachts. And when his eyes landed on me, something inside me, call it self-preservation, screamed, "Don't." But then he smiled. "You look like you could use another," he said, nodding to my glass. I should have lied. Told him I was fine. But the truth slipped out like a confession. I could use a lot of things. That grin, God. That grin spread across his face like he'd just found something he wanted to break slowly. "Let me guess," he said, leaning against the bar like it was built for him. "A drink, a little fun. Maybe a way out." I laughed, but it sounded nervous. Because he wasn't wrong. Fast forward 3 months, and my life didn't just change, it flipped. Suddenly, I was living in a penthouse overlooking Central Park. My fridge stocked itself, my rent disappeared, and my worries evaporated in the steam of rooftop jacuzzis. Ethan didn't just give, he provided. Cars, clothes, dinners that cost more than my monthly salary. He made it seem effortless, like breathing. And for a while, I believed he was my miracle. Until I realized miracles don't check your phone when you're in the shower. Started small. A question here, a suggestion there. Text me when you get home. Sweet, right? Except home was his place, and he had the security footage to know when I walked in. Don't go to that bar anymore. Bad crowd. Translation. Stay where I can see you. Then came the gifts with strings attached, like silk threads tightening around my throat. A watch because he wanted me to be on time. A car because he wanted to know where I went. A phone because mine was outdated. And he needed me to have the best. The best came preloaded with tracking apps. The night it all clicked, I was standing on that balcony, the one that made me feel like I owned the sky. Ethan was behind me, his arms circling my waist, his breath warm against my neck. It should have been perfect. But when he whispered, "You don't need anyone but me," something in me broke, because I realized he wasn't giving to make me happy. He was giving to make me his. And here's the thing about golden cages. They shine so bright, you almost forget you're trapped. Until the door locks. I told myself I could handle it. That I wasn't like those people you read about, the ones who stay because it's easier than leaving. But the truth? Luxury is a drug. And Ethan was the dealer who made sure I never ran out of supply. At first, I thought I had leverage. That as long as I played the part, smiled at the right parties, wore the clothes he bought me, let him pick the wine, I could keep a piece of myself intact. But control isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's a whisper that coils around your spine until you can't stand without it. The first real fight wasn't even about something important. It was about a friend. My best friend, Marcus, had been trying to reach me for weeks. I dodged his calls, mostly out of guilt, because what was I supposed to say? "Hey, remember that guy I met at the bar? Turns out he's rich. Like stupid rich. And now I live in a penthouse, and you're still splitting rent with 2 roommates in Brooklyn." So when Marcus texted, "We need to talk. Coffee? Tomorrow. Please." I agreed. Because I missed him. Because I missed me. Ethan didn't. "Why would you need to meet him?" His tone was calm, but his jaw was tight, the way it got when he was about to dismantle something or someone. "Because he's my friend," I said, trying to sound casual as I buttoned the white shirt he liked on me. I haven't seen him in months. His gaze flicked to my shirt, then back to my face. You have friends here. People who matter. People who matter to you. I shot back before I could stop myself. His eyes darkened. For a second, I thought he'd explode. But instead, he smiled. Slow. Dangerous. You're right, he said softly. You should go. Tell Marcus I said hello. I should have been relieved. But the way he kissed my forehead as I left felt like a warning disguised as affection. Marcus was waiting at a coffee shop in the village, his face lighting up like Times Square when he saw me. Damn, pretty boy. You look expensive. Thanks. I laughed, but it sounded hollow. He didn't waste time. You've been a ghost, Alex. What's going on? Are you okay? And that's when it hit me. Couldn't tell him, because saying it out loud would make it real. That the guy who saved me was now the guy who owned me. I'm fine, I lied. Just busy. Marcus gave me a look like he could see the bars of my cage. Busy or controlled? I froze. What? Alex, I've seen this before. The gifts. The silence. The I can't hang out because he needs me thing. That's not love, man. That's a leash. I wanted to argue. To defend Ethan because wasn't love supposed to be intense? Wasn't it supposed to consume you? But then my phone buzzed on the table. Ethan. How's coffee? Order me something sweet to bring back. I'll send a car. Marcus saw the name, and his expression hardened. He's tracking you, isn't he? I shoved the phone in my pocket, my pulse spiking. It's not like that. Sure, Marcus said, but his voice was sad, and that hurt worse than anger. When I got back, Ethan was waiting. Not in the living room like I expected. He was on the balcony, hands in his pockets, staring out at the city like it belonged to him. Maybe it did. Did you have fun? He asked without turning around. It was coffee, I said, setting the pastry bag on the table. You wanted something sweet. He finally faced me, and God, he was beautiful in that cruel, cinematic way villains are beautiful before they ruin everything. Marcus, he said, tasting the name like wine. You've known him, what, 10 years? 11, I corrected before I could stop myself. That's a long time. He walked toward me, slow, measured steps that made the floor feel like a fuse about to blow. He must know you better than anyone. I swallowed. Yeah, he does. Ethan stopped inches from me, his cologne wrapping around my senses like a drug. He reached out, brushing his thumb along my jaw in a gesture so tender it almost made me forget the ice in his eyes. Good, he murmured, because I'd hate to think someone who knows you that well would try to interfere. The air felt thin. My voice cracked when I spoke. He's my friend, Ethan. That's all. His smile didn't reach his eyes. Of course. But when I woke up the next morning, Marcus had blocked me. I didn't confront Ethan. Maybe because I didn't need to, because I already knew. Instead, I buried it. Like I buried everything that didn't fit the picture-perfect life he curated for us. Until the night of the gala. It was one of those events dripping with wealth and pretense. Chandeliers throwing diamonds across the room. Laughter that sounded like transactions. I wore a suit Ethan picked, shoes that pinched, and a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Halfway through the night, I slipped out to the terrace, desperate for air. That's when I saw him, Noah. Tall, lean, dark hair that curled at the edges like he'd been in the wind too long. His tux looked borrowed, slightly wrinkled, which made him real in a room full of mannequins. And when his eyes met mine, it was like someone had opened a window in a suffocating house. You look like you're planning an escape, he said, stepping closer. Maybe I am, I said before I could stop myself. He smiled, and for the first time in months, so did I. A real smile. One that didn't feel purchased. We talked. About nothing and everything. About how he hated these events. How I pretended not to. About music, books, stupid dreams I hadn't let myself think about since Ethan turned my life into a glass cage. And for a moment I forgot. Forgot the man who bought my silence. Forgot the strings tied to every gift. Forgot everything except the way Noah's laughter felt like freedom. Until I felt the hand on my shoulder. Enjoying yourself? Ethan's voice was silk stretched over steel. Noah froze. I was just leaving, Ethan finished, his smile polite but lethal. Noah glanced at me, something unspoken passing between us. Then he nodded and walked away, his shoulders tight. Ethan waited until the door closed before he spoke. He seems interesting. He was just being friendly? I said, my pulse pounding like a guilty drum. Ethan's fingers gripped my chin, tilting my face to his. You don't need friends, Alex. You have me. His kiss was soft, possessive, and it tasted like a warning. That night, lying in silk sheets that felt more like shackles, I stared at the ceiling and wondered when I'd stopped being someone and started being something. Possession. A prize. And for the first time, I let myself think it maybe Marcus was right. Maybe love shouldn't feel like this. Like drowning in honey. Sweet. Sticky. Impossible to escape. But how do you leave a man who gave you everything? And took everything in return? The answer came in the form of a text. 2 weeks later. From an unknown number. You deserve more than a cage. If you want out, meet me. 10 p.m. Pier 17. And I stared at it for a long time, heart pounding. Noah. It had to be. And God help me, I wanted to go. But I also knew this. If Ethan found out, it wouldn't just be a fight. It would be war. When I finally slipped out that night, my hands were shaking. Every shadow felt like eyes. Every step like a betrayal. Because maybe it was. Pier 17 was quiet. The river black and endless beneath the city lights. And there he was, Noah. Hands in his pockets. Like he'd been waiting for me forever. You came, he said softly. Yeah, I breathed. I don't even know why. Because you're tired of being someone's property, he said, his voice low but fierce. And because you still remember what it feels like to want something real. I laughed, bitter and broken. Real doesn't pay rent. No, he said, stepping closer. But it doesn't put a collar on you either. And then God, I don't know who moved first, but suddenly his lips were on mine. And it wasn't like Ethan's kisses. It wasn't control or conquest. It was chaos, wild and terrifying and free. For the first time in months, I felt alive. And for the first time in months, I was terrified. Because behind me, somewhere in the dark, I swear I heard the sound of footsteps. The footsteps weren't loud. Just enough for my pulse to trip over itself. Enough for Noah to pull back, his eyes scanning the shadows behind me. Alex, he murmured. And the way he said my name wasn't just a warning. It was a plea. I turned, but the pier was empty. Silent except for the hum of the city across the water and the occasional lapping of waves against wood. No Ethan. No one. Maybe I'm paranoid, I whispered. Noah's jaw tightened. No, you're scared. That's different. Before I could answer, my phone vibrated in my pocket. One glance at the screen, and ice crawled up my spine. Ethan, where are you? No punctuation. No emojis. Just 4 words heavy enough to drag me under. My fingers shook as I typed back, out for air. Couldn't sleep. 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. Then nothing. Noah stepped closer, his voice low. You can't go back there. I looked at him, at the desperation carved into his face, and I hated that part of me wanted to believe him. That maybe there was a world where I could just leave. Walk away from Ethan's empire and into something messy and real. But reality wasn't that forgiving. You don't understand, I said. He doesn't just let go. Then don't ask, Noah said, his hands brushing mine. Just take it. God help me, I wanted to. But the leash Ethan held wasn't leather or rope, it was made of debt, fear, the intoxicating lie of safety. I can't, I whispered. His fingers curled around mine anyway, warm, steady, pulling me closer. Then let me help. And that's when the world tilted, because from the corner of my eye, I saw him, standing at the far end of the pier, a silhouette sharp against the glow of city lights. Ethan. He didn't move at first, just stood there, hands in his pockets, watching us like he had all the time in the world. And somehow that was worse than if he'd run at us screaming. Because Ethan Cole didn't scream. He didn't fight fair. He dismantled. Noah, I breathed, my throat dry. Don't. But Noah was already turning, already stepping in front of me like a shield. Ethan's voice sliced through the night, smooth as silk and twice as lethal. I was wondering how long it would take for you to become a problem. Noah squared his shoulders. He's not your property. Ethan smiled, then slow, almost amused, like a cat humoring a mouse before the kill. That's adorable. Do you think you matter to him? That this, he gestured lazily between us, means anything? Noah didn't flinch. It means he's not alone anymore. And something in Ethan's face shifted. Not rage. Not yet. But something colder. Older. Like a predator deciding whether to strike. You know, he said softly, I could make one phone call and you'd disappear. Both of you. The words hit like a slap. Not because they were shocking but because I believed him. No, I said, stepping forward before Noah could. Ethan, please, please. He laughed then, and it was the ugliest sound I'd ever heard. God. I gave you everything, Alex. Everything. And you repay me with this? With him. This isn't about money, I said, my voice shaking. It was never about money. No, he snapped. And now the calm was cracking, rage bleeding through. It was about you needing someone to save you. And I did. I pulled you out of the gutter. I gave you a life people would kill for. And then you made me pay for it, I said, the words tearing out of me before I could stop them. Every day, with every breath. For a second, silence. Just the river and the sound of my heart trying to punch through my ribs. Then Ethan smiled again, but this time, it was pure venom. You think you can walk away from me, Alex? You think this little hero can keep you safe? He took a step forward, and Noah moved instantly, blocking him. He's not yours. Ethan's eyes flicked to Noah, and the temperature dropped. Do you know what happens to men who touch what's mine? Noah didn't blink. Guess I'll find out. The punch came fast. I barely saw it, just a blur of motion before Noah staggered back, blood blooming on his lip. He wiped it with the back of his hand, eyes blazing. Feel better? He spat. Ethan didn't answer. He just swung again. What happened next was chaos. Fists, grunts, the sickening crack of bone on bone. Noah wasn't a fighter, but he was stubborn as hell. He kept getting up, kept throwing himself between me and Ethan like he could absorb all the damage. Stop! I screamed, trying to pull them apart. Ethan, please. You'll kill him. And maybe that was the point. Because when Ethan finally pinned Noah against the railing, his forearm across Noah's throat, his voice was calm again. Deadly calm. You think you're saving him? Ethan murmured, his face inches from Noah's. But you're just getting him hurt. Get off him. I shoved at Ethan, clawed at his arm, but he didn't budge. Didn't even look at me. Say goodbye, Alex, he said softly. Because after tonight, you'll never see him again. Something inside me snapped then. Fear, rage, all the things I'd swallowed for months, they ignited like a match to gasoline. I grabbed the closest thing I could, a rusted metal pipe from the pier, and swung. Connected with a sickening thud. Ethan staggered, his grip loosening just enough for Noah to shove him back. He hit the ground hard, blood streaking his temple, eyes wide with shock. For a second, none of us moved. The world held its breath. Then Ethan laughed. Low, broken, terrifying. You think this is over? He rasped, dragging himself to his feet. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Noah grabbed my hand. Run. And for once, I didn't argue. We ran until our lungs burned, until the city swallowed us whole. Past neon signs and dark alleys, past the life I thought was mine and the man who almost owned it. By the time we stopped, we were miles from the pier, huddled in the shadow of a shuttered diner. Noah's knuckles were raw, his shirt torn, but his eyes, God, his eyes were steady. You okay? He asked, breathless. I laughed, hysterical, broken laughter that scraped my throat. No, I'm not okay. Fair, he said, managing a smile. But you're alive. That's a start. I stared at him, at the blood on his lip, at the way he looked at me like I was worth saving. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I believed it. "I don't know what to do," I whispered. "You don't have to know," he said. "Just don't go back." But even as he said it, I knew it wasn't that simple. Because Ethan wasn't just a man. He was a storm. And storms don't just fade because you run from them. Hours later, when I finally crawled into the cheapest motel room we could find, exhaustion slammed into me like a freight train. Noah crashed on the chair, still bleeding, refusing to let me clean him up until I promised I'd sleep. But sleep didn't come easy. Not with Ethan's voice echoing in my head. "You think this is over?" Because I knew it wasn't. If anything, it was just beginning. Morning came gray and unforgiving. Noah was still out cold when I slipped into the bathroom, staring at the stranger in the mirror. Hollow eyes, split lip, a bruise blooming on my jaw like an accusation. I didn't recognize this version of Meth One who fought back, who ran. But maybe that was the point. Maybe I wasn't supposed to go back to the person who let himself become property. The burner phone Noah bought sat on the counter, silent. My real phony lifeline to Ethan was gone, left behind on the pier. A tiny act of rebellion that felt like tearing out a piece of myself. I splashed water on my face, gripping the sink until my knuckles went white. I wanted to believe I was free, that I'd escaped. But deep down, I knew better. Ethan didn't lose. He regrouped. And when he came back, he wouldn't come alone. I didn't sleep again after that. Not really. Every sound outside the motel window felt like a threat wearing shoes. Every hum of an engine, every burst of laughter from the street, it all sounded like Ethan. By noon, Noah stirred, groaning as he sat up in the chair. His shirt was stained, his lips split, and yet when he saw me, he smiled. A soft, tired curve of his mouth that made something deep in my chest ache. "Morning," he said, voice rough. "You should be in a hospital," I muttered, grabbing the first aid kit we swiped from the gas station. He smirked, wincing as I pressed a cotton pad to his cheek. Hospitals ask questions. Questions lead to problems. I taped the cut above his brow, my hands trembling despite my best efforts. "You didn't have to do that last night." "Do what?" he asked. "Throw yourself at him like you wanted to die," I said, more bitter than I intended. "He could have killed me?" Noah's eyes softened. "Yeah, maybe. But then what? He drags you back, puts you in a cage, and I do nothing." I swallowed hard, my throat burning. "You shouldn't have to save me." "Too late," he said simply. And God help me, I wanted to kiss him right then, bruises and all. But fear slammed the brakes on that impulse. Because saving me wasn't a single act. It was a war. And the enemy wasn't done. We spent the next few hours in a haze of caffeine and strategy. Noah had a planer something close to one. Get cash. Get out. Disappear until Ethan lost interest. But I knew Ethan. Losing interest wasn't in his DNA. He was a man who bought companies just to burn them. Who kept enemies alive long enough to watch them starve. You didn't escape Ethan Cole. Not without consequences. By sunset, we were back on the move. Noah insisted on paying for everything with cash, leaving no trail, but paranoia gnawed at me with every mile. The whole time, his words from the pier echoed in my head like a curse. "You think this is over?" It wasn't. And when the first black SUV appeared in the rearview mirror, I knew why. "Noah," I whispered, panic curling tight in my chest. "Behind us." He glanced in the mirror, his jaw locked. "Shit. Is it Ethan?" "Yeah," he said, voice grim. "Buckle up." The next 10 minutes were a blur of screeching tires, red lights ignored, Noah cursing like a sailor as the SUV stayed glued to our bumper. Every time I thought we'd lost them, another one appeared, like wolves circling. "This is insane," I choked out. "How many guys does he have?" "Enough," Noah said. "But so do I." What does that even mean? Before I could finish, he swerved hard, cutting down an alley so narrow I was sure we'd rip the mirrors off. The SUV tried to follow and didn't fit. Metal screamed against brick as we shot out the other side, alive by inches. Noah didn't slow down until we hit the industrial district, a sprawl of warehouses and dead streets that smelled like rust and salt. He killed the headlights, rolling us to a stop behind a stack of shipping containers. My hands were shaking so bad I had to grip my knees to hide it. "What now?" "Now," Noah said, killing the engine. "We make sure they can't find you." "Me?" My voice cracked. "What about you?" He met my gaze, and there was something in his quiet resolve that terrified me more than the chase. "I'm not the one he wants." "No," I said, shaking my head. "No, you're not doing that. You're not, Alex." His voice was soft. Final. "You deserve a life, not a leash." Tears burned my eyes, hot and relentless. "Don't you dare talk like that." He smiled then, small and sad. "It's not goodbye. It's just later." And before I could stop him, before I could say all the things I'd been too scared to say, was out the door, vanishing into the maze of steel and shadows. I waited. Minutes. Hours. Time stretched until it felt like a blade pressed against my skin. Every sound made me flinch. Every headlight in the distance felt like death on four wheels. When my phone buzzed, the burner Noah bought, I nearly dropped it. "Unknown, run. Now." "Noah." I didn't think. I just moved. Out of the car. Through the dark. Feet pounding against concrete like a heartbeat. I didn't stop until the river was in front of me again. Black and endless like the night this all began. That's when I heard Ida voice like smoke curling through the dark. "Leaving so soon?" I spun. Ethan stepped out of the shadows, immaculate as ever. Not a hair out of place despite the chaos he'd orchestrated. Two men flanked him, both built like they ate glass for breakfast. My stomach dropped. "Where's Noah?" Ethan smiled, slow and poisonous. "Alive. For now." I wanted to lunge at him, scream, do something, but fear pinned me like a knife through paper. "Why?" My voice broke. "Why can't you just let me go?" "Because," Ethan said, stepping closer. "You're mine, Alex. You've always been mine." "No," I whispered, backing away until my heels kissed the edge of the pier. "I'm not." His smile widened. "You think he can protect you? That anyone can? I built you, Alex. Everything you are, everything you have, it's because of me." My breath hitched. "Then you should have loved me, not owned me." For the first time, something flickered in his eyes. Not rage, not control. Something almost human. But it was gone before I could name it. "You don't understand," he said softly. "You can't." "Maybe not," I said. "But I know this. I'd rather drown than live in your cage." And then I stepped back. Into nothing. The river was a fist, cold and merciless, dragging me down. For a moment, panic swallowed everything: sight, sound, breath. Then hands, strong, pulling me up, breaking the surface in a rush of air and stars. "Alex!" Noah's voice, raw with terror. His arms around me, hauling me to the shore, his body shaking with effort and rage and relief. When we collapsed on the rocks, gasping, I thought I'd imagined it. That maybe death was kind enough to give me one last hallucination. But then his fingers were on my face, his forehead pressed to mine, his breath mingling with mine in frantic bursts. "You're insane," he choked out. "You're absolutely—" I kissed him, because life was short, because love was rare, because I'd been owned for too long, and for once I wanted to belong to myself and maybe, just maybe, to someone who didn't want to keep me in a cage. The kiss was salt and blood and salvation. When we broke apart, he was laughing and crying all at once, and I realized I was too. We didn't stay. Couldn't. The city was no longer our sit, was Ethan's battlefield. So we ran. Again. Through backstreets and train stations, through fear and exhaustion, until we found a bus heading nowhere and bought 2 tickets with stolen cash. We didn't speak much. Words felt too small for everything between us. But when Noah's hand found mine in the dark, I held on like it was the only real thing in the world. Maybe it was. Months later, I wake up in a town so small it barely has a name. The air smells like pine and freedom. Noah's in the kitchen, humming off-key as he makes coffee in a chipped mug. Sometimes I think about Ethan. About the empire of glass and steel I left behind. About the man who tried to own me and almost succeeded. And then Noah smiles at Messoft, real, and the ghosts fade. Because this isn't a cage. It's a choice. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.